Hi, my name is Sean Cheek with Talking Baseball. I wanted to send a quick video here today and talk a little bit about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. As I do private instructional baseball lessons, I do speaking engagements, work with coaches, work with players of all ages from 6 to 35 years old. I work with softball players, baseball players, and one of the things that I'm noticing here as I work with players and I'm engaged with different teams is really the way that coaches, instructors, they engage with the people that they're working with. The other night I was working with some young players, and I noticed that another instructor in a different area of the facility was working with a 13-year-old player. He was working on pitching, and I could tell that the pitcher was very frustrated. He was very discouraged, and the reason for that was the instructor, meant well, was trying to help, but he was throwing 6 or 7 or 8 different things at this young man, and at the end of the day, the young man didn't get any of it and walked away more frustrated than probably he had started. And his goal was to get better through this process. And so I want to encourage coaches, instructors, as we get into the baseball season and you're working with your players, to remember really 3 basic things that I use when I work with my players. And one of the things that I'm gifted at and that I really enjoy is that I'm able to connect with these young men, the young women, and help them to understand and to like I say, to get it. They get the message. And so I want to talk to you about treating your player like a crock pot, not a microwave. And microwaves typically don't have the best of food, may have a temporary satisfaction, but it's not a long-lasting or rich or a flavorful experience. And so a crock pot's a little different, right? You put different ingredients in, you let it simmer, you let it cook. You don't try to throw it right in the microwave and make that end result. And we do that with our players. The messaging behind how we engage these young men, young women, has to be a way that it connects, and they have to be able to develop certain skill sets in order to grow upon the next skill set. And so I want to share my formula. You can use it if you'd like. Is my RBI method. The first is to be reasonable. I think a lot of times we set expectations on kids that aren't realistic, and I think we need to be reasonable with not only the players but also the parents, to help them understand that what we're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to accomplish with them takes time. And so you've got to be reasonable. Set the expectation appropriate at age level. A 6-year-old is going to have a different expectation than a 20-year-old. So you got to make sure that you're being reasonable when you're going into instruction, when you're going into coaching. Be reasonable with the player and the skill set in which they have. I have players that started out a little bit later in developmental instruction at 14 years old, and they're behind, say, one of my 10-year-olds that has been doing instruction for quite some time, but they've been able to build those skill sets. So be reasonable. That's the R. So be reasonable. Second is be basic. I think we message things like algebra instead of some very basic math. And what I mean by that is people connect different words with different activities a little bit differently. If I'm working with a young player and he has no idea what I'm talking about staying inside the ball, I need to be able to message it and be able to relate it and be basic. We have to have basic verbiage when we're talking to young athletes. We can't use big words and big phrases when we're dealing with young players. You've got to be basic. And so keep it basic. That's the B. And finally, be intentional about one thing at a time. This is probably my the biggest pet peeve that I have. Be intentional. And this is sometimes you have to re-engage your own self, because you're thinking ahead about what you want the end result to look like, but the kid's really trying to grasp one thing. So you've got to be intentional about one thing at a time. So I encourage you, if I typically start out with very basic, with foundation. In all of my lessons and instruction that I do, I always start out with foundation, so I start from the ground up. And I do different drills to engage, to help incorporate different activities, but I'm very intentional about one thing at a time, and it's really helped me to be successful as an instructor and as a coach. And so I just want to encourage you, once again, treat your players like a crock pot, not a microwave. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you will, like and subscribe to Talking Baseball, and there'll be more videos to come. God bless.